Yeah, hi everyone. It is November the 12th, and I thought I would just show up quickly just to share some information around a world fair that some people have been asking me about. So I thought I should do that today and just get through that. Before we start, just so you know, that the print book should be back in pretty much all the different places for purchase now. And it'll slowly move to various bookstores around the world. Again, you just have to wait a couple of days for getting things into your area, and the same with the ebook. Um, it goes to a few stores first, I guess, how the distribution cycle works, and it takes a few weeks to eventually reach where, for example, all the places Exit the Cave is at. So just be patient and give it a few days for the country or the area you're looking for it there. Um, I've had from the people who've already received it and read it, that's been some very nice comments already to me about it, so that's appreciative. It was a very challenging project to complete. Um, I have some interviews coming up this week. I'm just starting them. I've got 3 or 4 before the end of November just to give some overviews on this subject, and when they're available, I'll be posting various links to my website and over at my locals channel. You'll be able to track down where all the interviews are, so you can just go to my website. I'll put that link below, and you can keep track of interviews as they happen. So so I'm not going to talk much about Donald Trump itself because, of course, we're in the midst of a one way or another a giant world theater production, and so I'm not here to talk about is it going to be good, is it going to be bad, is the world going to be great, is the world going to be not great. I think I think you all know my feelings on those subjects. I really don't need to present them. But what needs to be discussed, which is very, very interesting, is like the first day after the election, he makes an announcement that he wants to hold what he's calling the Great American State Fair. Now you might as well call it a World Fair because in his mind or the way it's being presented, that's what it is. So the first thing he wants to do is put together what he's calling a state fair, which is meant to showcase each state in the union. So unlike a world fair, which would have country pavilions, right? This would be a place that has only city or state pavilions. And he's mentioning that he'd like to have this in Iowa. You can go. I've linked articles below. One is a print article from Iowa. Another is a news article where you can actually see the speech if you haven't seen it. And wanting to have it at the Iowa State Fairgrounds. And he said, this is direct quote, "My hope is that the amazing people of Iowa will work with my administration to open up the legendary Iowa State Fairgrounds to host the Great American State Fair and welcome millions and millions of visitors from around the world to the heartland of America for this special one-time festival. Together we will build it and they will come." Okay. There's a lot of symbolism here to it. Now, the suggestion as to the reason for this, beyond an upswelling of patriotism, is to celebrate the 250th anniversary of, I get that, of the Declaration of Independence, right? Which would be, July 2026. So the fair was supposed to start in May, I think, May of 2025, like in 4 or 5 months, and run to 2026 on that date. So the first thing because to me, a big part of my writing and exposing the expositions was discussing that these world fairs of the 1800s and the 1900s were related to the last reset. They were totally related to the reset, to the end of the one simulacra to the start of the new simulacra that we're in now. And it's interesting not only that this is the first thing he wants to do, but that date in July 1776 is being directly and that date, particularly, of course, in American history and American focus, it's not as big a date in Europe. But I'm wondering, of course, is that was that the start date of our simulation? Maybe it was. I don't know then what the world fairs of the 1800s would link in if the simulacra started in the 1700s. But it's just interesting that is that's the date that is being marked, and all of these fairs, right? I mean, I'd love to go to this thing for a couple of reasons. One, all of these big fairs were indicating where this reality was heading. If you go through the old, and it doesn't matter, not just the fairs of the 1800s, if you go through various fairs of the 1930s, the 1960s, they were like 20 years, they were showing 20 years ahead what this reality was going to look like, not just from the standpoint of technology, but from the standpoint of ideas, from the standpoint of morals, from the standpoint of what's acceptable, from the standpoint of how you should think. The world fairs were building all of that. So I'm not going to doubt that part of this world fair is going to be the fantastic, wonderful use of AI and robotics and technology and whatever, that this is going to be that AI and artificial reality, and that this is going to just be, I wouldn't doubt that it's going to be just overboard at this fair. The next thing, of course, that would be interesting to look at is what are they going to build for this? Because I took a look at the Iowa Fairgrounds. I've never been in the Iowa Fairgrounds. I took a look at it. It's not really large. Now, there does seem to be park space and things around it, but I mean, it's not a huge site to start with. It's not massive. And the question would be, supposedly, if this will start in May, what are you building? Are you building anything for this? What needs to be would need to be constructed, even if it's not there, if it's somewhere else? What do you need to construct? I'm almost guaranteed we're not going to see any buildings like we saw in Chicago in 1893 or St. Louis in 1904, or any of the famous fairs, Buffalo, Omaha, Nashville. Right? We're not going to see those buildings. Now, the city is Des Moines, and Des Moines has, I don't know if you take a look, for those of you who don't know, take a look at the Capitol building in Des Moines. Like, why would the center of Iowa need a building like that? It's just, anyway. Um, so it would be curious to me, what will they build? What would the constructions be like? Because what they could do, right? What they could do now in this is they could put up one kind of building as a facade that looks like the old um, fairs. Maybe the state of Illinois says we're remembering the Great Columbian Exposition of 1893, so we built this replica to make people think that that's what the buildings in 1893 must have been, that it must be this, and they'll build it out of the wood and the plaster like the way they said it's been done. And all they have to do is build one. And all they have to do is build one smallish replica as enough now to say, if anybody questions anything about these old buildings, they can just say, well, look what they built at the Iowa Fair. They're all the same. So I'd also want to keep track of that. What will they build for this? And is there anything that could become down the road a historian's out to try to use as, look at this building from 2025 to explain buildings of the 1900s. So that's the next thing to be curious about. So we've got, is it connected to some type of reset? Is it going to be presenting where this reality is heading? What if any buildings will be there? And the last thing just to bring up is, again, they're having it in Iowa. Iowa. That's in the, for those of you who are not North Americans, that's in the center of the United States. And very nice place, very flat, very prairie-like. Very nice people. But first of all, it's a long way away from where the mass of the population is. If you put this in Ohio or something like that, well, now you're in equidistance between New York, Chicago, Boston, Tennessee. I mean, you've linked this to a very easy transportation line. Iowa's kind of a long, it's literally in almost in the middle between New York and Los Angeles. So first of all, you're creating this massive amount of travel for people to come there, and Des Moines, Iowa is not that big. And if they're saying millions of people, again, where are they going to stay? Where would you where would you look after that many people when you've got 4 months to prepare for it? So already we've got these logistical questions of why Iowa. But a little bit of it is in the end of his comment, right? When he says, "Together we will build it, and they will come." Now, Iowa, for whatever reason, in novel, mystical-like writing, the state of Iowa has been used as a place where magical things happen, right? So it's the location. Kinsella put the story of Shoeless Joe, which became Field of Dreams, the movie, where the magical ghosts return to play baseball. You've got this as being the magical place of Bridges of Madison County, um, by Robert Lawler. And there's a few other things like this. We've got the the famous musical, The Music Man. That was set in Iowa, and again, this sort of magical transformation of the town and the boys, and then the huckster giving up his ways to marry marry the librarian. And so Iowa has this, for whatever reason, this presentation as a state that is magical. So by presenting this indication of this event in Iowa, you're linking it with we'll call it the romantic magic that exists in from literature and movies and art about that state. So those were the things that initially came up, and I felt that I had to present this because enough people have been asking me about it. It's like every day I get up and say, "Hey, did you know about Trump and his World Fair thing?" Yeah, I know Trump is. Yeah, I know. Thanks. So I finally, I got obviously I got to talk about it, and it is it's so unique to me that, and it's not that he's saying let's start it in 2026, let's start it on July 2026 and have it run to the summer. So let's have a year and a half to plan it out and have that anniversary as our start date. The anniversary is claimed to be the end date. That so it's like it's not the beginning of something. That anniversary date is being presented as the end. And that's really interesting for me, which also means they've got very little time to put any of this together. Let's just say it's something I'm going to keep my eyes on in the back burner. For those of you who are World Fair interested, I would think you guys should keep an eye on this too, because it's one of the what's the phrase? My spidey senses got tingling when I heard this one. Something is something is um, something's going on with this announcement, and I don't know what it is. But I'm curious, and perhaps the totality of this community at some point will figure it out. If anybody happens to live in Iowa, like if there's some people from Iowa, in the Hawkeye State, uh, pop by there, see if anything's going on. Is there any building construction happening? Is there is there any sign that anything is actually happening? Because May is really quick, and you're not gonna have a lot of time to get things going. So I'd be curious, like, is anything happening there? Is there talk about anything happening? Is there ads running in the Des Moines newspaper for construction workers or whatever? Like, I'd just be curious if this is more like just an idea that's getting just thrown out, or if this is going to be something that's really going to be attempted to be put together. And like I say, for me, Iowa would be, and nothing against Iowa. Again, I've I actually, part of the story of my whole birth into this reality is linked to Iowa, so I've got nothing bad to say about Iowa. But if I'm building a giant American fair, I would want to put it in a place that I think could be make the transportation hub easy, that would have easily enough resources to handle the supposed millions of people that you want to bring there, that you're not going to overflood an area and make it challenging to deal with the with the tourist influx. So to me, the fact that that's the state that is being sort of promoted, it's because of this sort of magical element to it. So what is the magical element that is going to be, let's say, put into this event? It's just something I just wanted to share that with everyone. For those who didn't know, that you can read the articles below, watch the little bits on it, and we'll keep track of this over the next 6 months and see if anything actually is ready to go in May. If it is, I'm going to be very curious. Take a look. Yeah, so when the interviews are up, you guys will know about it, and yeah, we'll see how those go. I'm looking forward to them. There was 4 or 5 people that I've had a number of good interviews with in the past, so I'm looking forward to sharing this new material with them and hearing their responses and hearing their questions. See you. Cheers.